Truffle is a great Ethereum programming framework. It allows programmers like us to focus on writing code instead of all the other things that go around Ethereum development, like deploying contracts, figuring out how to inject the Web3.js library. It handles a lot of that boilerplate code for us and allows us to write a very simple code for tests as well to make sure everything is testing successfully. So now let's take a look at how we can use this to our advantage for our Ethereum game. Just a reminder, this video is part one of a series, so if you haven't watched the previous two videos, you should be able to follow along just fine, but if you're interested in the ERC721 based decentralized application we're building, check it out starting from the introduction to the project and the technologies involved. So for this video, there are some requirements. The basic requirement is going to be that you have the Node.js development platform up and running on your computer, especially the NPM package manager tool. The setup for this varies widely depending on what system you're on, and there are already plenty of videos on YouTube detailing how to get that working for your specific system. So if that alone is a little over your head, I highly recommend taking a Udemy course or watching a series here on YouTube about entry-level Node.js programming before jumping into the world of Ethereum development. But if you've got that set up and ready to go already, let's go ahead and get started. All right, so it's time to get started on our project in earnest. In order to do that, we're going to be taking advantage of the Truffle suite of tools. Truffle has built a whole bunch of things. It started out with a code framework. Now they have other tools. One we're going to see today called Ganache, and they just have a whole suite of tools in order to help Ethereum developers get up and running quickly. So this is actually going to be a very straightforward process to begin our project. The first tool we're going to take a look at is called Ganache. Now you might be wondering, because of the fact that you need to deploy contracts to a blockchain before you can interact with them, it seems like that could really slow down development. It could be time-consuming, costly. Not with Ganache. Ganache allows you to set up an Ethereum-like blockchain on your local hard drive. It simulates peers and mining and all of those things in order for you to develop in a local environment, so you're not spending real money to deploy contracts and you're not waiting 15-30 seconds to interact with a real-world blockchain. So let's take a look at Ganache. So here you can see it has a local blockchain up and running. It's set up about, I think, at 10 addresses, put a balance of 100 Ether in each address. Gives you the mnemonics so you can access these on the command line or in any other wallet or anything if you want to. For now, we're just going to let this run and move on to the next step, and we'll come back to this and show more interaction with Ganache and how you can take advantage of it. So now we can use another Truffle tool. This is their original code framework. We'll go ahead and get that set up to get up and running in a project set up quickly. So the first thing we're going to do, of course, is install Truffle. Now if you have the Node package manager set up, this is very easy. So npm install Truffle. All right. Now I'm going to make a new directory for our project. I'm just calling it ethuniverse for now. Now we need to initialize a project, a Truffle project. So we're going to say Truffle init. Pretty straightforward. Let's see what it did for us. Now to look at this code, I'm using VS Code. You can use any text editor you want. Some common ones are Atom, A-T-O-M, or also Sublime Text is still used by a lot of people. The VS Code is kind of the newest, latest, and greatest thing, so that's what I'm using here. So this is what the Truffle initialization has created for us. It's created quite a few files. Let's go ahead and take a look at them. So it's created truffle.js, which is kind of a boilerplate, get everything up and running. So what it has done is created some contracts, migrations. This is a contract that you don't usually have to change It's used for deploying your custom contracts. So it interacts with migrations.js, which tells Truffle what migrations to do. And it gives us a spot to put our unit test that we'll be creating in the next video. So let's go ahead and add the contract that we created in the previous video to our new Truffle project. If you'll remember, we were relying heavily on the Opensea Zeppelin Solidity contracts. So one thing we'll have to do is make sure those are installed. So that's pretty straightforward. And now you'll be able to utilize all of those Opensea Zeppelin contracts. So let's go ahead and update this and give it some real names, things like that. So that's pretty straightforward, but you might be asking yourself, what's the point of Truffle? It doesn't seem like it's done a whole lot so far. So let's go back to our command line and see what Truffle can do in the deployment process. So first we'll want to compile the contract that we just created. See right here, it compiled our new token, created this new build folder, which has not only the compiled contract, but a whole lot of meta information about it as well, including the ABI, which we'll be using on our front end. Then down here you'll see the bytecode and the deployed bytecode, which is how these contracts are stored on the blockchain. So we've still got Ganache up and running. No transactions yet, it's just waiting for something to happen. Let's go ahead and put this contract on the blockchain. We'll say Truffle deploy. So you'll probably see this error a lot. What happens is Truffle doesn't know where to find Ganache. So you'll see it's running locally on localhost 127.0.0.1, but you got to pay attention to that port that Ganache is running on. So in this case it's 9545. So what we got to do is tell Truffle where to look for all this stuff. So we open up our truffle.js. Add the network we're looking for. You'll notice localhost 127.0.0.1, port 8545. We've got to change that to 9545. And even after the first time you do it, always pay attention. Sometimes some port will be used, something didn't shut down correctly, or something like that. So always, when you first run into trouble, if you get that error I got, just check this port number. More often than not, that's going to be the case, that you just have the wrong port in there. So we got our port correct. Network ID, what you can do is you can set up multiple ones of these, one for the local Ganache installation. You could set up one for the Rinkeby network and one for the production Ethereum network. And you would just give each one a set network ID so that Truffle knows which one is supposed to be deploying to. So let's try this deploy again and see if it works this time. So it's saying network up to date, but it didn't deploy anything. That's because we didn't create a migration. So the migrations are how Truffle knows what to deploy. If you've ever worked in a traditional web development environment, migrations are used to track changes to a database, a schema like that, where it just helps the system keep track of what is getting deployed, how it's getting deployed. So for everything you want to go on the blockchain, you should create a migration for it. So let's go ahead and do that. They should be numbered. So the first is the initial migration, which doesn't do a whole lot, just sets things up. So we'll call this 2. It runs the migrations in order. So in future videos, when we have multiple contracts that we want deployed, we'll have to be very specific about the order they're deployed in. But for now, this is our main contract, so we'll set it as migration number 2. We'll say planet token migration.js. We tell it to look at the Solidity file we created before, and then say, when you get to this point, deploy it. Pretty straightforward, pretty simple. Let's try to deploy again. All right, so this time it tried to deploy it. It said error encountered. Network state unknown, review successful transactions manually. You'll see this error a lot. Exceeds block gas limit. You see it especially when you're working with things like the Open Zeppelin contracts, because what can happen is each of these contracts is, including one contract, which is including more contracts. And when the compiler puts all these contracts together, the contract just gets to be really, really big. So what we'll try first is to increase the gas limit. So we'll go back to our Truffle configuration, and on this development environment, we'll just say, let's bump it up to 2 million. All right, so we had one successful migration to the network. Let's go ahead and check our Ganache transactions. You'll see that that contract was created in our local environment. Now, we got another error here. Planet token contract constructor expected 2 arguments received 0. So you notice the constructor of the Planet token, it says to expect a name and a symbol for our token. And I did not add those in the migration. It's really pretty straightforward. We just add the arguments after the contract name here. So we'll call it Planet token and have the symbol be planet, something like that. So let's try this one more time and see if it works now. So let's just try to increase our gas more. This is a bad way to do it. Before we go to production, we'll need to figure out what's going on here. But we'll be doing more of that debugging when we get to the unit test. So for now, let's just get it running locally and make sure it works. And there we have it. Our Planet token is on our local blockchain through Ganache. Let's double check that transaction. Went through, it was mined. Our contracts are now out there. So as you saw, we did run into some problems. So we need to set up some unit tests in order to make sure everything is as it should be. So in the next video, we'll be going over unit tests. You don't have to have a whole lot of knowledge about how unit tests work, so we'll go over all of that in the next video and why they're useful and what we can use them for in our project. So thanks for watching. Bye.